Well, welcome everybody. It's nice to see a good crowd here to tackle a really important issue and a challenging issue. Good morning. I'm Julie Sue. I'm a commissioner for the San Francisco Commission on the Status of Women and also a co-chair of the San Francisco Collaborative Against Human Trafficking, also known as SFCAT. I'd like to recognize my trusty co-chair, Nancy Goldberg, sitting right in front, and in a moment you'll hear from her. On behalf of the San Francisco Human Rights Commission, the San Francisco Department on the Status of Women, and SFCAT, welcome to the 2015 Anti-Human Trafficking Campaign. 5 years ago, San Francisco formally launched this annual campaign that runs from January 11th, National Human Trafficking Awareness Day, to February 12th, Abraham Lincoln's birthday, to bring public awareness to modern-day slavery. The beginning of the campaign in 2010 also coincided with the United Nations General Assembly's mandate to the UN Office on Drugs and Crime to produce an annual report on human trafficking under the UN Global Plan of Action to combat trafficking in persons. The UN marked its first ever United Nations World Day Against Trafficking in Persons on July 30th of last year. Data on human trafficking is only what has been detected and reported, and the numbers are only the tip of the iceberg. More than 20 million, a conservative estimate, are trafficked according to global statistics. This past year, about 44,000 survivors were counted. Global data in 2011 suggests that about 53% of human trafficking was in the form of sexual exploitation, 40% was forced labor, 0.3% was organ removal, with 7% in other unnamed forms. In the Americas, 48% falls under sexual exploitation, 47% falls under forced labor, with 4% in other unnamed forms. UN data covering 2010 to 2012 or thereabouts or more recent indicate that some 72% of convicted traffickers are men and 28% are women. 49% of detected victims are adult women, and sadly, 33% of detected victims are children, a 5% increase over the 2007-2010 period. And the rewards are lucrative for the criminals who exploit. Forced labor alone puts an estimated $150 billion in their pockets. While sex trafficking gains more media attention, labor trafficking is equally, if not more, pervasive because of the seemingly less overt criminal nature. In South Asia, over 80% of the reported victims are trafficked for forced labor. As previously mentioned, in the Americas, trafficking for forced labor and trafficking for sexual exploitation are detected in nearly equal proportions. Of 128 countries covered in the 2014 UN report, 15% reported no convictions for human trafficking. And on the report, 15% reported no conviction for human trafficking, and 16% reported more than 50 convictions. Countries with fewer than 10 convictions, or those between 10 and 50 convictions, came in about equally, about 26%. In 2013, SFCAT and our city agencies came together to host a conference on child sex trafficking. Today's event follows a very successful conference held a little over a month ago on the hidden epidemic of labor trafficking. The overwhelming message from attendees and presenters of both conferences was that we must have greater public awareness before we can effectively address the problem, and we must have a more survivor-sensitive approach to helping victims. But we must also be in the position to prevent human trafficking and cut off the ill-gotten gains that perpetrators enjoy. San Francisco has done much to address the problem of domestic violence through a collaborative approach with government and service providers. It is this multi-pronged approach that allowed San Francisco to successfully stave off domestic violence homicides for almost 4 years. Recognizing that a collaborative approach is the ideal way to solve complex issues, Mayor Ed Lee established the Mayor's Task Force on Human Trafficking. According to the California Department of Justice, California is one of the top 4 destinations in the country for human trafficking. And the FBI places the San Francisco Bay Area as one of the top 13 cities for child sex trafficking. Today, you will hear from a large cross-section of those working to raise awareness of human trafficking, and those who work on policy, law enforcement, victim services, and prevention. But first, a few words from my co-chair, Nancy Goldberg.
Thank you, Julie. I am really happy to see everybody here today, and I'm sure that we have all been horrified and saddened this past week as we watched and read about the tragic events that have terrorized thousands in Paris. As I watched, I too felt the terror and then thought about what could I do. This is a horror and a helplessness being felt by the world, far beyond the borders of Paris. I am aware that those feelings are exactly what people who terrorize others want us to feel, that power and control over others can hold entire populations captive. It was not unlike the feeling of helplessness I felt in 2000 when I first became aware of the instances of human trafficking that went far beyond the pages of the history books I read. Human slavery that creates terror through force, fraud, and coercion was and still is something of the present. Then, in 2005, the Jewish Coalition to End Human Trafficking was formed, but many still turned a deaf ear by saying it was a minor issue. Through persistence, we presented a forum in 2009, and many participants from the local and state government were involved. That was the turning point. And from that sprung the San Francisco Collaborative Against Human Trafficking, as Julie said. And it was one of the first public-private partnerships on the subject in the country that I know of. Exactly 5 years ago, almost to the day, then Mayor Gavin Newsom announced us at a press conference at City Hall. As a matter of fact, many of you were there, including Mayor George Gascon, who's District Attorney George Gascon, who's going to be in attendance here today. So here we are, 5 years later, and our vision of a working mayor's task force has been accomplished, staffed by Diana Olivia Aroche in Mayor Lee's office and Manoush Kandel in the San Francisco Department on the Status of Women. People don't turn a deaf ear to the topic today. Instead, they want to know what they can do. People are working hard in both the public and private sectors to find ways to combat sex and labor trafficking. We have to be unified. True collaboration in government needs community involvement, and the community has to know that their government is in back of this effort, as you are showing by your presence here today. Thank you, Julie.
Thank you. And first on the agenda, we have Deanna Olivia Roche. She is the Director of Violence Prevention in the Mayor's Office, and she's a steadfast force in getting issues addressed. She is a great champion, and anytime I see her, she says, "What can we do?" So with that, please welcome Deanna Olivia Roche.
So thank you for the honor of being able to speak today. Good morning, everyone. First off, I'd like to thank the San Francisco Human Rights Commission, the Department on the Status of Women, and SFCAT, of course, for being a pioneer and leader in the work that we do here in San Francisco. Thank you for working diligently every day, day in and day out, to make sure that San Francisco understands the issues of human trafficking at a level where we are not in a silo. We are not in a space where we end up forgetting the details, the faces, the issues, the stories of all those women that actually get trafficked here in our city. In San Francisco, we understand that human trafficking is one of the world's fastest growing criminal enterprises in the world. We understand that it's a $32 billion industry that affects mostly girls and about 80% of women and girls together throughout the world. We feel that it's a really unfortunate issue and topic that impacts not only women, but our families across here in the city that live here day in and day out, that work every day in massage parlors, in our industries, our hotels. But we will say, and we will proudly state, that our law enforcement agencies, our city departments, and our city officials work very hard to make sure that every individual is held responsible for the heinous acts that they commit here in the city and county of San Francisco. We assure that even though San Francisco is highlighted as one of the cities that end up being impacted mostly by human trafficking, we will work day in and day out to make sure that criminals are prosecuted, that individuals are not being let go, or that they fall under the shadows, and we allow them to continue creating these types of crimes that impact many individuals, not only girls and women, as I explained earlier, but also their families and their relatives. As it was mentioned earlier, I have the honor of working very closely with some of the departments here and SFCAT to establish an anti-human trafficking task force. We've been working for the last couple of years, day in and day out, to be able to make sure that we identify what the issues are, what the trends are. We work very closely with DOSW, the Department on the Status of Women, and the mayor is very much committed to continue making this a top priority in terms of violence that impacts our city and county of San Francisco. Mayor Lee today would like me to express to all of you that we need to continue working harder every day and each day. We understand that it's a very complex issue that hides behind our massage parlors, our different industries, and not until we end up, as it was discussed earlier and shared earlier by the co-chairs, not until we understand and value each other's partnerships, and we really, really value the impact of collaboration, will we be able to end human trafficking here in San Francisco. Mayor Lee expresses his regrets of not being able to be here, but at no moment does he want you to take that the commitment isn't there. We work very closely with Supervisor Tang, with all the board electeds, and of course our chief and the Department of the Status of Women, the Department of Public Health, to make sure that we end up having the resources, the inspectors, the different service providers necessary in order to end human trafficking. It's a silent epidemic, and we ask you today to just continue joining forces with us so that at one day we can say that San Francisco confidently has zero human trafficking. Thank you.
Thank you, Deanna. Next up, we have Supervisor Katie Tang, who represents District 4. We think of District 4 as a very kind of quiet, foggy hamlet, but sadly, there are massage parlors, and behind those doors, they aren't necessarily legitimate spas and where women would go to. And that's where everyday residents come in, because if something seems a little off, as the U.S. Attorney's offices look beneath the surface and report it. So I'd like to have Katie Tang come up.
Thanks very much, Julie, and good morning, everyone. I hope you all had a good start to the new year. First of all, I really want to thank, obviously, the San Francisco Collaborative Against Human Trafficking for inviting me to be part of your effort. As Julie mentioned, I stand here because I got involved as someone who grew up in the Sunset District and then started working for the district, not realizing that there were so many issues in this, what many consider a sleepy part of the city, but actually is home to over 40 massage establishments, many of which we have been working very closely with our Department of Public Health and obviously our task force that involves DPH and our SFPD in trying to figure out how it is that we can better reach some of the potential victims that may be working there. And so that's how I got started on the issue. And although today we are kicking off, this month of activity, really our work continues year-round, day in and day out, with many of the partners here that you see today. And so I really just want to offer my thanks to everyone, because we could not do this alone. It has to do with our Department of Status of Women, our SFPD, our Department of Public Health, everyone in the community, even volunteers. And so I do want to build upon what Deanna mentioned, and which is sort of our own individual, but also collective call to action. Educate yourselves about some of the signs that you may find in different areas. So again, whether it's a massage establishment or other service industries where there may be people who are potential victims, learn about what those signs are and actually try to reach out to some of our wonderful nonprofit partners in San Francisco to see if we can get them some help. And so I'm proud that last year we were able to successfully pass legislation that I sponsored to give our Department of Public Health some additional tools to work with so that we can better regulate and enforce in our massage establishments. Last year I also worked in lobbying some of our state officials and trying to change state law that also prohibited us locally from properly enforcing and regulating our own establishments. And so today, in fact, in Land Use Committee have some interim controls in place that we're going to be putting in addition to some permanent controls that we hope, again, will give us better tools to be able to address some of these issues on a local level. So with that said, I am happy to jump into the award ceremony, if that's all right, or would you like to?
This is the perfect time, and I'd also like to recognize with her Inspector Antonio Flores from our San Francisco Police Department Special Victims Unit. He was a 2014 recipient, and he will be joining Supervisor Tang. And I notice that Supervisor Yee is here. He's speaking a little bit later, but Supervisor Yee, why don't you come up and help present the awards?
All right, so with that, I am pleased to announce our 2015 Modern Day Abolitionist Award recipients. And again, Sergeant Flores has been an incredible partner working with us on this issue. And thank you, Supervisor Yee, for being here. So today, for our first honoree, this is our Modern Day Abolitionist Award for Government Policy. And today, we're very pleased to present this to our very own Dr. Emily Murase. Is the Executive Director of our Department on Status of Women, and in her capacity there, she has been a tireless advocate for broadening the local anti-human trafficking collaboration, increasing the role of the city agencies in combating human trafficking, and expanding resources for victims of human trafficking. Under her leadership, the Department of Status of Women has made addressing human trafficking its priority, and I have definitely enjoyed working with you on that. By solidifying effective collaborations between city agencies, law enforcement, and community-based organizations, she has contributed to the overall improvement of the local community response to modern-day slavery. Dr. Murase's critical involvement helped launch the San Francisco Collaborative Against Human Trafficking, as you all know, a membership of over 20 agencies representing a broad array of organizations in 2010. In 2013, her leadership was instrumental in the creation of the Mayor's Task Force on Anti-Human Trafficking, which is currently staffed by her department, and they are taking on important tasks such as data collection, protection of child victims of sex trafficking, human trafficking prevention during major sport events, and monitoring businesses and populations vulnerable to human trafficking. So as we all know, she is passionate in her advocacy, and her policy work has inspired new professionals, volunteers, and community members to join our local and global effort, really, against human trafficking. So please today join me in congratulating Emily Murase on her recognition as a modern-day abolitionist.
Thank you so much, Katie. It's such a beautiful view. I want to thank Police Chief Greg Sir for coming. We have U.S. Attorney Belinda Haig and Anne-Marie Conroy, so many friends in the audience. It's really, really a wonderful view. So last year marked my 10th year in this position, Executive Director of the Department of Status of Women, at the beginning of which human trafficking was not even on the radar. So really there's been incredible work on this. It was around 2008 when I first met members of the Jewish Coalition. Raise your hand if you're a member of the Jewish Coalition Against Human Trafficking, who brought this issue and said, we want a city partner around this. So I joined with the Human Rights Commission to really raise the visibility of this. As was mentioned, we had our first conference in 2009. In 2010, then Mayor Gavin Newsom, then District Attorney Kamala Harris, and Supervisor Carmen Chu, ably staffed by Katie Tang, helped launch the collaborative. And that year, SFCAT coordinated 20 events in 30 days. Each year since then, SFCAT has organized the annual events. And now, under the leadership of Mayor Edwin Lee, we have a task force on anti-human trafficking. We have a new data collection tool. We have stronger regulations for massage parlors. And I just want to highlight the work of Sergeant Tony Flores and in working with state and federal partners in busting human trafficking ring around fruit vendors. These guys on the street corners selling fruit, like who would have suspected that it was actually part of a trafficking ring? So many people to thank. I thank the hardworking members of SFPAT. I see Juvenile Probation Chief Alan Nance as well. It's really a city public-private partnership. I want to thank my small but mighty staff. If you could please stand and be recognized. I have just 4 permanent staff. Allison Ibsen, some very capable policy fellows that do all this work. So in closing, I just want us to recall the work of Harriet Tubman, one of the most famous African-American abolitionists and my hero since I studied her in the 3rd grade. So, she was born into slavery in 1822. She was 5 foot tall, disabled. She had seizures because she was hit with a 2-pound iron by a slave master. She escaped slavery at the age of 27 and then became conductor of the Underground Railroad for the next 10 years. She returned to Maryland nearly 20 times to rescue 70 slaves and providing instructions for another 60 on how to escape north. She earned the nickname Moses for bringing these slaves to freedom. So here we're talking about a single African-American, very petite, disabled former slave who freed 130 people. So I just want to read what Frederick Douglass wrote to her. The difference between us is very marked. Most of what I have done and suffered in the service of our cause has been made public. I have received encouragement every step of the way. You, on the other hand, have labored in private. I have wrought in the day, you in the night. The midnight sky and silent stars have been the witness of your devotion to freedom and of your heroism. So surely the challenges we face today are nowhere near the challenges that Harriet Tubman faced. So let's really celebrate this powerful collaboration and use all of our collective power to eradicate slavery from our community. Thank you so much.
Well, congratulations again, and very well said, Emily. So our next Modern Day Abolitionist Award is for Advocacy, and I'd like to invite up Sharan Dhanoa here. She's the coordinator of the South Bay Coalition to End Human Trafficking. So as the coordinator there, a collaboration which is among 40 different organizations consisting of law enforcement, victim services, nonprofit and private attorneys, and social service agencies, Ms. Dhanoa assists the victim service, law enforcement, legal, and outreach work groups with their work plans. She supervises student and faith-based volunteers, develops brochures and press releases, facilitates meetings, develops meeting agendas, and conducts Human Trafficking 101 and SB 1193 trainings. She was instrumental in the creation of a comprehensive human trafficking intake form and developed protocols for assisting survivors through the ordeal of prosecution of their traffickers. As we all know, can be an incredibly difficult situation. She spearheaded, organized, and has now chaired the Super Bowl work group, which works with the victim service providers, attorneys, law enforcement, and human trafficking advocates from all over the Bay Area. She's also engaged in innovative collaborative work with Stanford University to create an interactive database, map, and an online resource and training guide for anti-human trafficking work. She is not only engaged in anti-human trafficking work locally, but also has worked globally with Destiny Reflection, which is a nonprofit that serves young women at risk of sex trafficking in India. She currently serves on the board and assists them in their strategic planning decisions for its anti-human trafficking work. So with that, please join me in congratulating Ms. Dhanoa on her recognition as one of our modern-day abolitionists.
Thank you very much. I wanted to thank San Francisco Collaborative Against Human Trafficking, Department on Status Women, and of course the Human Rights Commission for this honor. I know there are so many people doing amazing work in this area, so I'm truly honored to receive this award. I also know that with regards to this issue, everybody needs the support and love of their friends and their colleagues, and I'm so happy Benita's here as well. She's one of the great ones out there. So I want to thank my parents who, hopefully this will stave off their questions of when I'm going to be a real lawyer for a little while at least. And they supported me as I've traveled abroad. I decided to pick up and go to Calcutta to work with some women there. And as I'm standing here, you know, those are the women that I think about that continue to inspire me. I think of, they inspire me and they really had me challenge what my notions of success are in this field. I think of Chanda, who she found her strength in her ability to sign her pay stub. And after 30 years, she was able to reunify with her family. So despite passing away this last year, she had the strength to know that she was free and see her family one last time. Sorry, when I think about Chanda, I always get worked up. I'm fine now. Through those women, you know, I constantly reminded their resilience, their strength, and their grace. And I try to bring that to the work that we do here locally. I think of collaboration really is finding anybody can really collaborate on this issue. We've been lucky in that we have a lot of very dedicated individuals in the South Bay who, despite our very different roles, are able to look at the larger picture and realize that if we really want to combat this issue, we have to do so in a victim-centered, trauma-informed way. And I really encourage our policymakers. I think the Bay Area has been fantastic. We're all building capacity in our ability to identify potential survivors of trafficking, but our decision makers also have to help us keep up with that need by funneling resources towards our direct service providers, our legal service providers, and towards coordination itself, so that we can keep up with that need. So as we're gearing up, we know that the Super Bowl is going to bring a lot of attention to this issue, and that's what I stress, the attention to the issue, not the causality. We just want to ensure that the community is ready to keep up with that. And I encourage everyone, I haven't met anybody yet who has wanted to help on this issue and can't find a place. So I'm looking forward to collaborating with each and every one of you. Thank you.
Thank you again for all of your work, Sharan. And our next Modern Day Abolitionist Award goes towards the category of education. And we are going to present this to Benita Hopkins. So Benita is the Director of Education from Love Never Fails. In her primary role there, she is responsible for driving school adoption of Love Never Fails' middle and high school abuse prevention and sex trafficking awareness program called Love Don't Hurt. Over the past 2 years, she has educated over 3,500 students directly and via partnerships with community-based organizations such as the YMCA, Freedom House, and Starting Point. This program has been approved by the California Department of Education and has been requested by school districts in the District of Columbia, Pennsylvania, New Jersey, Illinois, Oklahoma, and North Carolina. You should be very proud of yourself. Over the past year, Benita was also part of the leadership team that solidified memorandums of understanding with Oakland and San Francisco Unified School Districts. She is also rolling out education programming in Palo Alto, San Jose, Fremont, Oakland, Hayward, and of course here in San Francisco. Benita has also launched the Youth Commission Against Trafficking, a platform that provides a vehicle for youth to speak out against trafficking, address local government, and rally their fellow students during school walkathons that they organize. As of December of last year, walks have been scheduled in San Ramon, Hayward, Oakland, Fremont, San Jose, and so forth. You must have a lot of miles underground. In addition to her work with the education team of the Youth Commission, Benita has spearheaded large-scale awareness events such as the South Bay Freedom Expo that was delivered in the summer of 2014 and the upcoming East Bay Expo scheduled for February of this year in Oakland. So please join me in congratulating Benita on her recognition as our modern-day abolitionist, and again, an inspiration for us all.
Thank you, one and all. I am honored and very humbled to stand here before you today. And Sharan got me started, but I'm not going to cry. Love Never Fails is an organization, yes, located in the East Bay, but we service the entire Bay Area. And yes, I am the education director, but it started from one young lady who was trafficked here out of the Bay Area. And our mantra, our motto is, if even for one, that's one too many. And you've heard how we've serviced so many. We are a nonprofit only for the last 3 years. It was 3 years in December. And not to pat ourselves on the back, but our programs, one of our programs is Search and Rescue, and we have rescued 40 young, it just happens to be young women so far, in our program. And I think that tells a lot about our passion for this issue and for my passion as well. Our students are important. I know they're always lauded as the children of tomorrow, but I like to say they're the children of today. And many of them are standing and taking a stand with regard to this issue. And that is so important. They all want to be involved. They all want to help. And they are doing that. And I'm so proud of them. And I want to thank you, Dr. Murase, and Sharan, my co-honorees. Love Never Fails is a part of both coalitions, the San Francisco Collaborative, as well as the South Bay Coalition. And so both keep me working a lot, needless to say. But Dr. Murase mentioned Harriet Tubman. I will mention Dr. Martin Luther King. One of his, a paraphrase or a part B of one of his quotes is, injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. And that's my mantra. If it's anywhere, whatever the ill, we should do something about it. I've always been a person growing up who, if I saw something that I could use my strengths and talents to put forth an effort toward to make the situation better, that was my job to do so. And here I stand today, very humbled, but thank you so much.
So I'm going to turn it back over to Julie now. Thank you and congratulations to all the winners.
Thank you so much, Supervisor Shane. We're going to have Supervisor Normandy hang out a little bit because towards the end of this press event, we're also going to cover children. Really is the prevention. As Belinda mentioned, many people think about trafficking of children or adults from other countries, but it happens right in our own backyard. And a large feeder of vulnerable children, particularly in our foster care system. So I want to congratulate the awardees again, and Sharan, to her proud parents sitting right there. She will become a real attorney one day. We have federal attorneys, city and county, and I'm a state attorney, so she has such great talent that she will be snapped up anytime she decides to practice law. Next, I'd like to bring up Gina Castro-Rodriguez, and she's representing District Attorney George Gascon today. And I have to say, Gina was so dedicated. She came to our labor conference in December and sat through the anatomy of a case. And it's really important to have that crossover with the federal government and the state government. And so I'd like to welcome Gina from Special Victim Services.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here today representing the Office of George Gascon. I am the Chief of Victim Services, and I'd like to bring a little bit of perspective of working with the victims today. Successful prevention and prosecution of human trafficking requires that we not only apprehend the trafficker, but that we have services that are comprehensive for the victims, regardless of their immigration status. Additionally, human trafficking must be a top law enforcement priority. It's an old crime, but due to the advantages of technology, perpetrators are using this to avoid detection. To tackle this, we need new data-driven approaches to uncover human trafficking networks and activity, and we need better support for victims. This month, our office will be hosting an all-day conference on human trafficking to further the work in this important area. We're looking at increasing the trauma-informed responses to working with victims and survivors of human trafficking. The conference will be on January 29th at the LGBTQ Center here in San Francisco, and we'll take a look at a law enforcement perspective, a victim perspective, and a service provider perspective in order to give you a comprehensive look at how we help people survive. Finally, thank you to all of you for your hard work combating human trafficking in San Francisco, and please consider our office a partner in these efforts. We look forward to working even harder in 2015 on human trafficking in San Francisco. Thank you.
Thank you, Gina. And next we have our Chief of Police, Greg Sir, and it's been a tough job. I know we've had recent terror threats, so we thank him for being here in the face of this difficult time.
Good afternoon. I guess it's still morning. My days are kind of crashing together. It's really a pleasure for me to be here and for us to be a part of this. I think, as Deanna said earlier, a $32 billion industry, second only to drug trafficking in the world, is just, that in and of itself should shine a light on this particular issue. We are considered here in the United States a destination country, very sadly. 14,000 to 17,000 victims are trafficked into the United States. But this figure does not include the people that are trafficked within the United States. And better than 70% of the victims identify their country of origin being the United States. To that end, Attorney General Kamala Harris convened a body, the Human Trafficking Working Group, in 2012 to examine the nature and scope of human trafficking in California and evaluate the state's process. The main focus was to address the challenge and find ways to protect and help victims and bring traffickers to justice. The working group includes more than 100 representatives, state, local, and federal law enforcement. I see Melinda Haig here, our U.S. Attorney, and we could not have a greater partner than Melinda's office has been, and I know Tony Flores is here. I mean, the amount of cases that we're able to do and bring the full force to bear, not only of our district attorney's office, but of the U.S. Attorney's office, and rightfully so. Since mid-2012, between 2010 and 2012, over 1,200 victims have been identified, over 2,500 vet investigations have been initiated, and almost 1,800 individuals have been arrested. Locally, the Stand Against Global Exploitation Project has been providing outreach since 2002, and very fortunately now we have SF-CAT with Julie and Nancy at the helm, and their leadership, and I hope Diana's still in here. Diana has been spectacular too in bringing all the groups together. Over the past decade, SAGE as well has had several partnerships to end human trafficking and concentrated efforts on enforcement and public awareness. In 2011 in San Francisco, we had a lot of police officers leave and we didn't want to lose track on our focus, so we formed the Special Victims Unit as a means to best investigate crimes against vulnerable victims and to assist with providing services to stop this cycle of violence. Labor cases, human trafficking cases investigated, underage victims rescued, hotline tips handled, massage inspections, staff interviewed, and something we're very proud of, and Tony can correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe we do by far more U visas in San Francisco than any other jurisdiction in the country. Up to 625 in 2014, just through Thanksgiving weekend, to make sure that victims of domestic violence and human trafficking can stay in this country and testify against their attackers. Unfortunately, because human trafficking is more profitable and a bit less risky than drug dealing, criminal organizations and street gangs are increasingly turning from drug trafficking to other crimes, including, very sadly, trafficking in human beings. Human beings, it seems, can be moved more openly and with less risk and provide, again, very sadly, a longer term return on investment. And as was spoken to by the district attorney's office, Innovations in technology have made it possible for traffickers to recruit victims and customers alike online, managing transactions from remote locations and using other trafficking victims to make arrangements, shielding traffickers from sight and reducing the risks of detention. So as law enforcement and under the leadership of the U.S. Attorney's Office, the Attorney General's Office, and our District Attorney's Office, and certainly our Mayor, Katie Tang, and Supervisor Norman Yee, as well as Nancy and Julie, we need to shift with them and bring the community's efforts to track trafficking on the internet and social media and use emerging technology to be better than they are. We, the police department, will continue to enhance our efforts through the training of our members, participating in working groups and task forces to identify victims, and through the extensive investigations to keep these violent criminals from exploiting our most vulnerable. And I too want to lend my congratulations to our modern day abolitionist award winners, Emily Murase, Sharan, Dhanoa. You know, it was funny when she was talking about being a lawyer. My grandmother, till the day she died, was wondering when I was going to knock off this and become a lawyer. I can tell you, I really like doing it. And Benita, Hopkins, for your work. And I think it speaks volumes to the fact that these three just oak tree strong women can be brought to tears just at the thought of what happens to even one person. We need to stay right there. Thanks.
And before I bring up our federal enforcement people, I'd like to bring up Supervisor Norman Yee. And as many of you know, he worked with children for decades before he became a supervisor. He also sat on the Board of Education. And this year, we are making extra concerted efforts to reach to our schools. So a few words from Supervisor Norman Yee, representing District 7.
Thank you, Julie. This issue is near and dear to me, and it started with me growing up in San Francisco and seeing much of the abuses that people are talking about, whether it's with children or with young ladies. And when I came into office, it was interesting that the first issue that our residents got really upset about was this massage parlor on West Border, and I thought, oh, that's simple. We'll just go in there, ask them to inspect it, and we'll be fine. I didn't realize how complicated things could be and why it was complicated, and it's caused by not our jurisdiction necessarily, but at the state level, and making it basically handicap local folks from doing much. And so when I found out that Supervisor Tang was working on it at the state level, I was really happy that I was appointed to be serving on the League of the California Cities to also from the inside have that institution advocate for us in the city. So, and I continue to be on there, and I'm hoping that we could come up with new ideas, new laws that will make it easier for us locally to deal with these type of things. When it comes to children, there's things that we need to do. We need to educate kids. As speakers have said, it's not just people internationally coming into the city, but there throughout the United States, we see abuse happening to our own people. So we need to educate our children from the beginning. The younger, the better. We just have to make it age appropriate. And everything I talk about in terms of issues that kids should know about, I always promote get them as young as possible. Get them to understand that what's right, what's not right. When they see something that's not right happening to their friends, they will be aware of it so that they could be part of the solution. So I'm really happy to be here. I know this effort is really a collaboration of everybody, as you can see. And when you have people like Benita, Sharan, and Emily are really local heroines in this effort, we know we're going to make a difference in all this. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Supervisor Reed. Just like to recognize Noriko Shinzato, and she's from Phil Ting's office. And really, it does take a village, and we have our state legislature working on these issues. And as many of you know, Phil Ting was originally our assessor recorder before he got elected to the Assembly. I also wanted to just give a shout out to State Senator Mark Leno's office. They couldn't be here today, but they did co-sponsor our labor trafficking conference. It was Mark Leno who sponsored legislation to cut off the profits for sex trafficking. And it's really nice to be at these particular conferences, and it's nice to have friends in different places. So I also had mentioned to Fiona Ma, our new Board of Equalization member for District 1, as well as Betty Yee, our new statewide controller, that we need to be a little bit more aware of where assets are coming and going, where taxes are being paid. I'm not going to make a commitment for my boss at the Department of Insurance, and so what I say is my own thoughts and not representative of the Department of Insurance, the disclaimer. But when Assistant District Attorney Casey Bates, who handles the human trafficking cases in Alameda County and is part of HEAT, he talked about the 1275 hearings in the Penal Code, which talks about particular assets being used for bail. And so really the code says if it's unlawfully obtained assets, feloniously obtained is really the word, that the person should not be granted bail. And I thought, light bulb on, our department regulates the bail industry because it is a form of insurance. So I've spoken with the commissioner and our legislative director, and whether or not it becomes an actual piece of legislation right at the moment is not the issue, just that it's on the radar, but also we may issue a bulletin to ask bail agents to be more careful and scrutinize the assets used for bail. And so it's every little baby step, I think, that really makes a difference. I want to recognize Judge Mariana Warmy standing in the back, and she's been steadfast in working on human trafficking issues and really was instrumental in helping us get our labor conference off the ground. And next, I'd like to bring up one of my favorite law enforcement. I think she's a superwoman, and that is U.S. Attorney Melinda Haig, and she represents the Northern District of California. Melinda.
The super people are all of you. I represent, 130 assistant United States attorneys who work in my office, and they work really hard every day on all kinds of things, incredibly complicated white-collar fraud cases, securities fraud, Foreign Corrupt Practices Act, healthcare fraud. The people in my office work on Ponzi schemes, they work on computer intrusions, economic espionage, public and foreign corruption, civil rights cases, drug trafficking cases, gang cases, murder cases, among any other things. The sad thing is, though, if we had no other responsibilities, all those other responsibilities that I talked about, I could put all 130 of them on human trafficking cases. And they could work full-time every day, all of them, all 130 of them, on those cases, and we still wouldn't have enough people to combat human trafficking in our jurisdiction. So thankfully, we are not alone in this. We have all of you. We have the service providers. Without you, we couldn't identify the victims, we couldn't help the victims, we couldn't provide the services that they need, we couldn't rescue them from their situation, we can prosecute the cases, we can't rescue them. So thank you, especially to our 3 award winners today, to Benita, to Sharan, to Dr. Murase. Thank you to you for all of the work that you do. Thank goodness we have Mayor Lee and the departments and the commissions and all the people that work so hard on this issue. Thank God we have you. Thank goodness we have you, Nancy and Julie and Dr. Murase and all the other people that work for the city, for the departments and commissions represented here today. We could not do it without you. Thankfully, we have great partnerships with our law enforcement agencies, with our District Attorney, George Gascon, and all of the other 14 district attorneys in our jurisdiction. Thank goodness for our San Francisco Police Department and Chief Greg Sewer, who does amazing work. I don't know how he does it. I feel like every time I pick up the paper, I see a picture of him on the scene of some awful thing. And it's not because he's running out there to get in front of the cameras, it's because he's out there working with the fine men and women of the San Francisco Police Department every day to make sure that we are all safe. to make sure that the victims of human trafficking are safe and to make sure that every one of us is safe in the city of San Francisco. Thank goodness for them. Thank goodness for our federal law enforcement agencies. Tatum King is here representing the Department of Homeland Security. We have great leadership in our federal law enforcement agencies and the FBI and all the law enforcement agencies that combat human trafficking and otherwise keep us safe here in the Northern District of California. We all try and hope to make a difference in this area as well as every other area we have responsibility for. Just to give you a few examples, recent examples of the work that we've done together, working together here in the Northern District of California, we recently indicted 10 defendants for operating in federal parlance, operating a prostitution racketeering enterprise involving 40 Bay Area brothels that recruited women in Asia to come to this country to work as prostitutes. Working together, we recently prosecuted a Hercules resident who pleaded guilty to transporting multiple minors around the United States for prostitution, advertising them on the internet on sites such as myredbook.com, and acting as, unfortunately and tragically, as their pimp. Working together, we recently shut down that website, myredbook.com, arrested the operators who were living in a lovely home on the peninsula, and charged them with facilitating prostitution and money laundering. Working together, we recently brought federal bribery charges against 2 men in connection with an East Bay brothel disguised as a massage parlor with the great help of the Emeryville Police Department and the Department of Homeland Security, HSI. These defendants allegedly bribed a police captain with the Emeryville Police Department who was posing as a corrupt police officer. They were bribing him allegedly so he wouldn't shut down their business. Thankfully, he was posing as a corrupt officer and not actually one. We worked together in this case with the California Attorney General, Kamala Harris, and her office, which also brought related state charges. We work really well together here in Northern California. The district attorneys, the law enforcement agencies, all of you, the service providers, the mayor, the departments, the commissions, all the incredible people, these rocks that we work with every day. So thank goodness for all of you. We couldn't do it without you. We work together every day with you to prosecute labor trafficking cases, sex trafficking cases, and international, I put in the same category, international sex tourism cases. We're honored to do this work, and we are grateful beyond measure for the partnerships that we have with the people in this room and others in Northern California. And I am truly honored to be here today to recognize, again, our modern abolitionists. I love that phrase. It's great. Benita, I don't think we've met before, but wow. And Dr. Murase, we know you and have worked with you so well. And Sharan, I don't know that I've met you either, but wow. And I look forward to working with all of you. We look forward to working with all of you in the future in this incredibly important work. So thank you. Thank you for having me.
Thank you, Melinda. So before I introduce our next speakers, I just, had another light bulb that went on. Mayor Lee was able to get grants to have in-language classes in Cantonese and Spanish on domestic violence. And that started me on my journey to go study Cantonese again, and now I'm taking Mandarin. And really a lot of the victims are not English proficient. And so we need to recognize that. I want to say to Chief Greg Sir, it's an honor to be working alongside some of your men in blue. We know that the AT&T language lines are not ideal, and so even when these officers, men and women in blue, who hear these calls and are actually off duty, when they hear a need for a bilingual officer, actually on their personal time will go to the scene, and that's really important. I'm hoping now, and I always give more work to Emily, so she's always wondering, why is Julie calling again? But I would like to have an in-language class on human trafficking so that we can actually spread the word in language media, and also going to our community colleges, particularly where they have ESL classes. I think that is where we also do the prevention work. So that was the light bulb moment. Every time we have these events, I have little light bulb moments. Next, it is my great pleasure to bring up Tatum King. He is the acting special agent in charge for Department of Homeland Security, Immigration, and Customs Enforcement. Homeland Security investigation.
Hi, good morning, everyone, distinguished speakers and guests. First, I'd like to recognize the great work of the San Francisco Collaborative Against Human Trafficking and their partner members. Most notably, co-chair and co-founders Ms. Julie Sue, Ms. Nancy Goldberg, as well as Ms. Antonia Levine for her work and leadership in organizing all these 2015 awareness events and training sessions. I know that takes a lot of work, and I've actually got to go to one of the meetings, and I can see she's really doing a great job, as well as all the other partners at these meetings as well as the leadership of Dr. Emily Murase for her work as the Executive Director and Chief Advocate for the San Francisco Department on the Status of Women. We wholeheartedly support the efforts of the collaborative and look forward to working with them as they continue to identify and help victims in need. Also, congratulations to the 2015 award winners, Dr. Murase, Ms. Sharan, Dhanoa, and Ms. Benita Hopkins. You are inspirations to all of us. Also, thanks, of course, to Ms. Haig. Great partnership with the prosecutors, the federal prosecutors. Of course, that is really the bread and butter of the case. You want to help the victims, and you also want to hold the violators to account. And we can only do that through the work of our excellent prosecutors, as well as the Chief Sir. I know he does great work every day. Again, the proof's in the pudding. You can see the cases they put on the table. As you know, the reason we are here today is to bring trafficking into the light of day and appeal to the community as a whole to see something, say something. I know you hear that with the TSA and terrorism awareness, but it also applies to human trafficking. As is apparent in this forum, non-governmental partners, as well as local, state, federal, and international agencies are working together to fight this modern-day scourge that oppresses the most vulnerable members of our community. While our partnerships are strong and focused, we need the public's critical help in identifying these types of acts that are occurring in our community every day. Keep a watchful eye and notify law enforcement authorities anytime they see something that isn't quite right. The initial call and subsequent intervention by law enforcement can be the key to getting the victims to a safe place, begin recovery, and lead to the investigation, arrest, and prosecution of the traffickers. Human trafficking is one of the most heinous crimes that ICE HSI investigates, akin to modern-day slavery. This horrendous form of exploitation is happening to this day around the globe, across the country, in our own backyard, and as Chief Sir mentioning, day in and day out, unfortunately in our community here. Victims pay to be illegally transported into the United States only to find themselves in the thrall of traffickers. They are forced into prostitution, involuntary labor, and other forms of servitude to repay debts upon entry into the United States. And Ms. Haig mentioned a couple of cases that are ongoing in this area. They find themselves surrounded, the victims, by an unfamiliar culture and language without identification documents, fearing for their lives and the lives of their families. DHS and ICE are serious about ending human trafficking. In fact, the department has instituted human trafficking awareness training for all the department employees. The department also launched the Blue campaign in 2010 to address trafficking internationally and domestically with a focus on awareness through prevention, protection, and prosecution. A major component of the Blue campaign is training so that law enforcement around the world can recognize the indicators of human trafficking, which facilitates successful human trafficking investigations. And there's more information online if you're interested on dhs.gov/blue-campaign. A lot of great material, public service announcements, other training, etc. that's online. We want the public to see that and to know it's a great resource for them. ICE HSI relies on tips from the public and non-government organizations, as represented here in this room, to dismantle these criminal networks. And we encourage you to keep your eyes and ears open to suspicious activity. Trafficking victims are often hidden in plain sight, voiceless, and scared. While we continue to encounter situations involving foreign nationals who've been trafficked into this country, as pointed out by the other speakers, we're seeing more and more victims that are actually born here in the United States and are viewed as citizens. So it also has been, as the Chief Sir mentioned, 80% of the confirmed sex trafficking victims involved American-born victims, a staggering number. Tragically, many of the domestic trafficking victims are children. Regardless of the trafficking victim's age or nationality, the common denominator in all these cases is that the human traffickers prey on the powerless, the desperate, and the vulnerable. Traffickers typically control their victims using threats and often violence, or virtual handcuffs, we like to say. For trafficking victims who come from outside the United States, those actions might include seizing their passports upon arrival or threatening them with deportation or arrest. And for the victims that may be listening today, we will not arrest you. We will get you the services you need, working with the the NGOs in this room, we will make you whole as much as possible, but we will not arrest you. We're seeking to make you, again, get you the services you need, make you whole as much as possible, but get the violators. Our main goal is to get the violators. But it doesn't matter if they're here or anywhere else around the world, we're going to get them, rest assured. HSI is working closely with local and federal prosecutors as well as with NGOs to identify, rescue, and assist the victims of these crimes and prosecute their traffickers. In fact, our stats for fiscal year 14, this is nationwide for ICE, we had 1,770 arrests and 440 victims were identified. Again, a great number. The sad thing is there's many more out there, so we have more work to do. We have a victim-centric approach to these cases, which that means is we have specially trained victim witness coordinators. We have a full-time victim witness coordinator that works with NGOs, and I see some Benita's heads nodding, that's great, as well as we have agents that are cross-trained in victim witness coordination, so they know to work with USCIS, they know to work with the NGOs, they know to work with the Departments of Public Welfare to make sure they're getting the services they need. Tragically, we believe many human trafficking crimes go undetected because the victims are fearful about coming forward. That's why we're here today, to let folks know that it's okay to come forward. We're here to help. I know we understand it takes years and years to make that progress and to get the relief they need, but we are here to help. We must make it clear that help is available. Urge the public to contact law enforcement if they detect something amiss. This is how many of these cases come to the attention of law enforcement. And again, countless cases, though, come from NGOs because we know overseas a lot of law enforcement is not trusted. However, the NGOs can bridge that gap, and we're grateful to them for doing the great work they do. As a reminder, if the trafficking victims listening to us today, reassure them we will do everything we can to find you and help you. Human trafficking amounts to modern-day slavery. No one should be forced to live in a world of fear, isolation, and servitude, particularly in a country which prides itself on its freedom. So thank you for the work that you are doing every day. We appreciate it. We look forward to continued success.
We have John Kramer, and he's the District Director, Department of Homeland Security, U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services for the San Francisco District. Long title.
It's a real honor to be here with so many community leaders that are just leading the way in this very important public safety and health issue in our community. The United States Citizenship and Immigration Service, what we're called USCIS, plays a role on the remedies part of the DHS Blue campaign in an effort to end human exploitation. Other agencies might investigate human trafficking and arrest the traffickers, but it's our job to facilitate the protection of the victim. As a person who's being trafficked, you might become an ongoing economic asset to your smuggler. Perhaps you work as a prostitute, maybe you're a servant, or you're doing forced labor in a modern-day slavery scheme. The immigration law created the T visa, specifically for those who've been trafficked. It's authorized by the Victims of Trafficking and Violence Protection Act of 2000. The T visa lets people who have been trafficked stay in the United States for 4 years while they cooperate with law enforcement agencies pursuing the case. Once a victim has a T visa for 3 years, he or she can apply to become a permanent resident of the United States and get a green card. And 5 years later after that, the person is eligible to apply for citizenship. These visas have provided a wonderful incentive for cooperation and have resulted in taking many abusers out of our communities, with the help of people who might not otherwise have had the courage to come forward. In 2002, the first year that we had these visas, we only had enough qualified applicants to grant 17 visas. But at the end of our most recent fiscal year, 2014, we granted 188 T visas, plus another 269 visas for family members. But those numbers are not enough. We're authorized 5,000 T visas each year, and we want every one of those visas to go to someone who's eligible. And our message is, don't be afraid to ask for help. We've been more successful in getting applications in granting our U visas that go to victims for a host of criminal activities, including trafficking, criminal restraint, forced labor, slavery, and debt servitude. We have 10,000 U visas to issue each year, and since our second year, in 2010, we've issued every one of them. Since there's no breakdown on which crimes are granted in the U category, we don't know how many exactly of those are for enslavement crimes. But as with the T visa, the U visa, in continuing cooperation with law enforcement, can become a lawful permanent resident and lead to United States citizenship. Other victims can also benefit from remedies that we administer in USCIS. The Violence Against Women's Act in 1994 and reauthorized again by Congress in 2013 made it possible for battered spouses, children, or parents, and not just women, to self-petition to become permanent residents without relying on an abusive family member. It may be that you're divorced from the abuser or that the abuser has died, but now these victims can self-petition for themselves and maintain their legal status in the United States. In fiscal year 2014, more than 11,000 petitions were approved under VAWA. Those people can then file to adjust their status to lawful permanent residence, get their green cards, and eventually find their pathway to citizenship. So the United States Citizenship and Immigration Service, we welcome this opportunity to publicly acknowledge all of the community leaders in this room, the great stand that you take on behalf of victims and their needs, and to stand with our law enforcement partners to do our side on what we can with immigration benefits and status, and we stand ready and able to assist however we can. Thank you.
Thank you. And it gives me great pleasure. I could recognize him in the back. And Jack Jacqua is the co-founder of Omega Boys Club, where he helps a lot of vulnerable boys to become outstanding men. And we couldn't do it without people like Jack. Thank you.
Good morning. It's an honor for me to stand here, a little different group than I normally stand in front of. I'm on the street a lot. I work in the community a lot. I'm committed to working with the young people that we're talking about here. I'm very aware and becoming more aware all the time of the seriousness of the reality of human trafficking. I think my message, the only thing I can say maybe that hasn't been said quite the same way today, is that there are so many young people who walk these streets, who live in some of our, I used to say houses, but live where they live in the city of San Francisco and in the Bay Area, that are feeling hopeless. I don't care how smart they are. I don't care how beautiful they are. They feel hopeless. They have pain in their heart, in their gut, and they act on that pain and that hopelessness. And I know we deal a lot with drugs and with guns, and human trafficking is walking right alongside with the evil specter of profits. We have so many victims. And I guess what I want to really just say and leave you with is the awareness. We have to stop hiding, as a city, as a society. We have to stop hiding from the reality of the pain these young girls and young boys feel. We can't rationalize academically the pain and the way they feel. And we have to acknowledge it. And we have to understand technology is not going to take the place of some individual who's going to listen to the pain, who's going to maybe hear their story, who can then perhaps advocate for them and to make them the powerful woman that we see in this room today, or the powerful man going from the boyhood to the manhood that are sitting in this room today. We have to understand the pain is there, it's real. And I just feel that the awareness, this is great here today. That's why part of the work we do is the Omega Boys Club and many things. The community in the San Francisco community organizations reaching out and beginning to learn more and more about this issue of human trafficking. But my point, and I'll leave you with the fact that as I look around, I see some of you looking at me like I'm crazy, and some of you, are acknowledging just what I'm saying, because we have to stop pretending these young people, you understand me, don't exist. And as the city changes economically and socially, as it's changing, we're forgetting about these youngsters. And just to end this, right around the corner, 4 youngsters, and they were 20, 21, 19, they're youngsters, were murdered Friday night in a more affluent part of the neighborhood. And I was shocked when I heard the comments of some of the people in the business area of the neighborhood didn't even know who they were living next to, who's in the community. The heart and the soul of San Francisco. There are still poor people living here, people of color, young girls. People are being exploited by guns and drugs and human trafficking. So just awareness, it's a beautiful thing. That's the hope. The hope is to listen. The hope is to reach out. Hope is not to patronize, but to understand and advocate. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Jack, for those inspirational words. Yes, we have to look beneath the surface, and some of our best advocates were victims who turned into survivors, and much of our most effective training for agencies, for workers, happen to be from people who are survivors. So we need to make our outreach much more survivor-centric, and we work on that every day. So we have our healthcare workers going out to talk to hospitals and even law enforcement. To refer to people as human beings and not use victim, survivor, or stabilize somebody, because that's not a human kind of approach. So I know I want to just congratulate our abolitionists. I see Benita nodding her head, and we really need to reach people on that human level, because when victims are feeling that kind of pain, they don't think that they're worth the help, and every human being is worth assistance when they need it. So thank you all for being here. There is contact information for the media if anyone wants to follow up. I also want to bring to your attention a list of human trafficking awareness events. It's available on the SFCAT website. And to really bring our children into the fold, the closing event will be February 11th from 5 to 7 at the San Francisco Main Library in the Corrett Auditorium. It culminates in a teen poster contest. So we've had some very impressive artists and awareness in our schools, and we're hoping to get more of the teachers and counselors involved this year. Thank you very much.